happy to be here at the Lit Fest. For the next 40 minutes, 50 minutes, we'll talk about how we can appreciate the sculptural traditions of India. I'm trying to go in a chronological order. We are going to be mostly looking at South India, but I'm going to be starting from a temple that's in the north. So what you're looking at on the screen, and I hope you can all see it from where you are. The lights have to be switched off, please. Can I request you to switch off the lights? Otherwise, the audience cannot see the image on the screen. Thank you. Is it okay now? Yes. Okay. So what you're looking at is a Gupta period temple around the 5th century CE in a place called Dhyogar. It's made of sandstone. There are some very beautiful sculptures here. I'm sorry, this is not moved. Now, on the screen is a sculpture of Anantashayana Vishnu. You can all see Vishnu very clearly on Adisesha. But what you need to see here, you see a number of images on top of Anantashayana Vishnu and at the bottom. Now, we could so easily pass by this sculpture and not pay any attention to it and say we've seen Vishnu, we've been to this temple, which is now called the Dashavatara temple in Dhyogar, or we could try to pay attention to it. Lack of pointer, so I will try to describe this. From the navel of Vishnu, right in the center on a lotus is Brahma. Please remove that volume bar. It's blocking the sculptures, yes. To the left, to the right of Brahma, to our left, you see a person on an elephant. That's Indra. Now, to his right is a small sculpture of a peacock, and that's Subramanya riding on a peacock. So come to the center again. To Brahma's left, you see a huge Nandi, and that's Shiva and Parvati riding on it. So all the gods and goddesses have come to see Anantashayana Vishnu. And at the bottom, you see a number of people standing. So we'll go to a next slide, if the slide changer works. So this is how Anantashayana Vishnu looks. Next. So this is how the group of people standing below Vishnu look. We can so easily choose not to look at them because Vishnu himself is so majestic, or we can choose to look at them. Now, to my extreme right and to your extreme right is someone who is standing with his arms across his chest. And his hairstyle, I should go back to the previous slide, but since I don't have this in front of me, you just look at it this way. Right? No, go to the next one itself, because I'll have to keep going forward and back. Now, he is somebody who has a very round hairdo around his head. It's round, actually. And he is standing at attention as though to do the bidding of Vishnu. Whatever Vishnu wants, he has to do. So now these sculptures depict in human form the different ayudas or the weapons of Vishnu. So we know of the Sudarshana chakra. You're all aware of the iconography of Vishnu, and Sudarshana is the chakra that he holds in his right hand. So this is a depiction in human form of Sudarshana, who is always standing at attention, literally, to do whatever Vishnu wants him to do. If you look at the one next to Sudarshana, he is holding his right arm with his left. And that right arm is slightly bent. It's not straight. And it looks as though it's a bow. So Vishnu holds a bow. Vishnu uses a bow, which is called Sharanga. So this is believed by art historians to depict the bow of Vishnu. The next one, that is the center one in this picture, has a sword. He's holding a sword, literally. And that sword of Vishnu is called the Nandaka. And though it's not there in this picture, to Sudarshana's left, that is to the extreme right of our picture, is a lady. Now, what is a lady doing in a group of men? And we call them Ayuda Purushas. Ayuda is weapon and Purusha is a form. So the last one depicts a woman, and that is believed to be the Gada or the mace of Vishnu, which is called the Kaumodaki. So Kaumodaki Gada in Sanskritam, that's Sanskrit, is in feminine gender. So she is depicted as a female. So you have this entire range of the weapons of Vishnu shown mostly in the masculine form and one in the feminine form. Next, please. So we are now going to different places across India. We are coming to a place called Badami, which was earlier called Vatapi, and this is in the 6th century. It was the capital of a dynasty called the Chalukyas. You may all be familiar with the name of Pulakeshin. So this was Pulakeshin's capital and many of his ancestors and successors as well. Now this entire rock formation is of sandstone, where the architects and sculptors of the Chalukyan period excavated deep into the rock and created amazing cave temples. Next, please. So this is cave number 3. Cave number 1 is for Shiva, 2 is for Vishnu, 3 is for Vishnu, and 4 is for the Jains. And this cave temple, number 3, is the biggest and the best of the 4. You can see how deeply it has been cut in. And they were cutting in the 6th century with the bare minimum equipment. We don't know what they had, and cutting that deeply inside. Next, please. So as we go into this cave temple, this is what you see. Magnificent creations. There are 4 columns of pillars. There are 4 rows of pillars. You can see the one to the left is very different from the one to the right. So each row of pillars is different inside this cave temple. Just imagine how they cut. You would have had the bare wall in front of you, and then you were cutting around the rock and creating a pillar. And they are all perfectly aligned and of the same dimensions and proportions, the pillars in each row. So as you go right in between row 1 and row 2, at the end, you have a sculpture of Vishnu. Next, please. And this is how this cave looked once upon a time. It was in a very bad condition till the Archaeological Survey of India stepped in and they have completely conserved this cave. Next, please. So now this is how Vishnu looks over here. Again, we can all say, yes, we've been to Badami, we've seen all 4 caves, we were up and down in half an hour, see how fit I am. But that's not the way to see Badami. You have to stand there and stare at each sculpture for half an hour, and then maybe we can understand something. We have seen Vishnus and Vishnus. We've seen seated, reclining, standing Vishnus, but we haven't seen one like this till now, nor are we going to see another like this. He has one leg, his left leg bent, resting on Adisesha, which served as his couch in Diogar, and here it's his seat. The other leg, his right leg, is again in a very unusual position for Vishnu, for any deity for that matter. And his lower hands rest on his legs and his upper hands hold the Shankha and the Chakra. Now please look at how the Chakra is held. Generally, whenever you see Vishnu, the flat face of the Chakra is towards us. Now here you can see that the Chakra is completely turned and the rim is pointing towards us. Now this is a very, I won't say uncommon, fairly uncommon type of chakra, holding the chakra. This is called Prayoga chakra in technical parlance. Prayoga means in use. So, on a sports field, if you were to throw a discus, you would not throw it with a flat face pointing outwards. You would throw it with a rim pointing outwards so that it would fly in the air. So Vishnu uses this chakra, this position, when he is about to throw it at his enemies. And so we can understand that in the Pallava period, the Pallavas were the contemporaries of the Chalukyas or Badami, this kind of chakra was depicted in the hands of Vishnu. So that is one thing that we really need to notice. The other thing we need to notice, solely missing a pointer here, is that at the bottom, where the coils of Adisesha can be clearly seen, that is the snake on whom Vishnu sits can be clearly seen, to Vishnu's right, you have Garuda. That small thing sitting there with his legs folded, that's Garuda. If you go close, you can see the wings clearly outspread. The other thing we need to notice here, next photo please. Okay, previous one. This one, you have to notice Vishnu is wearing a crown which is rather peculiar. Usually you have a sharp pointed crown. Even if you ask a child to draw a crown, it will draw something conical. This is completely flat topped. If you come to the Pallava country and look at some of the images of the Pallava kings that are there in Mamalapuram, Mahabalipuram, here also you will see that's a flat top crown. Now I am thinking perhaps that these sculptors saw the kings around them at that time, the Chalukyan and the Pallava kings, and then imitated for Vishnu what their monarchs were actually wearing. And perhaps Some of the Chalukyan kings sat like this on the throne. We cannot think of a throne as a small seat like the one you're sitting on. It would have been a very broad, nice, majestic asana. So perhaps the sculptors took something from what they saw around them. Generally, they did. So this is a very rare kind of Vishnu that you're seeing over here. Next slide, please. And this is next to Vishnu. On the wall adjacent to Vishnu, you have a Varaha. Now, you all know the story of Varaha. For those of you who don't, excuse me, this is the third incarnation or avatara of Vishnu, where he rescues the goddess Earth, whom you can see in his left hand, from the bottom of an ocean after killing a demon called Hiranyaksha. I really don't know how clear it is there for you, but the grains of sandstone, the horizontal grains of sandstone are very clearly seen on this rock. So if you look up to the legs of Varaha, it's actually not blue, it's brown, but it's looking blue in this photograph. So the Varaha is coming out of the ocean. I'm thinking that this sculptor perhaps chose this particular wall to carve that Varaha because it would seem like he is coming out of the ocean like that, carrying Bhudevi. Call it my imagination, I don't know, but I think because the other wall on which that Vishnu was carved does not have those lines of grains of sandstone, only this one has. And again, if you look, the chakra is a Prayoga chakra, though it will look as though the flat face is towards us. Yes, but then Varaha is facing that direction. So the chakra is facing towards him and he's going to throw it, probably at Hiranyaksha. So these are the little details that we can get from sculptures. Look, it's very easy to admire a sculpture without knowing anything about it. Like we can enjoy music and we can enjoy dance without knowing the intricacies of these art forms. Yes, but if we know a little more, I think it helps us a lot. Next, please. Inside cave 3. We are still inside cave 3 of Badami. You'll see the sculpture. It's slightly damaged and we may really not want to look at it, but let's go up close. Next, please. Next, please. So this is how this sculpture actually looks. Now, what do we see here? This very clearly is again Vishnu because you notice the Shankha in his left hand and then the Prayoga chakra in the right hand. You have to start noticing and then you'll notice that it's Vishnu. Vishnu as Rama or Krishna will have 2 hands. Vishnu generally has 4 hands. Here, can you count? 8. This is an 8-armed Vishnu, which is very rare and very peculiar. So here in cave 3 of Badami, you have some very unusual sculptures and this is an 8-armed Vishnu. Some hands are unfortunately slightly damaged. Next, please. So this is how the Vishnu over here looks. Next. The other 8-armed Vishnu that you need to see is in Kanchipuram. It's a temple in active worship, so I don't have a photograph. If you want to go still further, cross the seas, go to Cambodia. This is the famous temple of Angkor Wat. Next. So we have to go that far from India to see the third Ashtabhuja Vishnu, Vishnu with 8 hands. Next, please. And this is the famous Angkor Wat temple. Next. And here you have an 8-armed Vishnu. This was originally there in the apex of the temple, and then in later times when it became a Buddhist structure, this was kept over here. So what you see in the Badami cave temple right now is the oldest 8-armed Ashtabhuja Vishnu. Probably the one in Kanchipuram is as old, maybe slightly older, but since it's in worship, I was unable to get a photograph for you. And then in the 12th century, you have this one in Cambodia. Next, please. Now we go back to cave 3 in Badami. Right at one corner of the corridor, you have that Vishnu seated on Adisesha with the Prayoga chakra. Opposite end of that same corridor, you have, next please, this is how it looked. Next please. So can any one of you recognize which deity this is? This is Narasimha. This is a Sthanaka Narasimha, which is rare to see. Generally, Narasimha is seated or he is tearing Hiranyakashipu apart or fighting Hiranyakashipu. This is a standing Narasimha. To his left, at the lower end, is Garuda, and to his right, at the bottom, is Prahlada, his devotee. Again, after seeing this, we can walk away saying the nice, tall Narasimha standing with Prahlada and Garuda by his side, or next, please. We can pay attention. Now, what we see over here is a 4-handed Narasimha. And in the upper two hands, where he should be holding the Shankha and the Chakra, you do not have the Shankha and Chakra. You have two people over there. Again, this is the same concept which you saw in the Dashavatara cave of the Gupta period. These are called the Ayudha Purushas. Instead of showing the Shankha and Chakra, they are symbolically showing it as two human beings. Please go to the previous two slides. There's something, please stop here. Now there's something else that I want you to see. Narasimha is leaning to his left, and he appears to be leaning on something, and we don't see what that something is. Again, I'll have to go there to show this to you. He's leaning on this. The previous slide, please. That he was actually leaning on. Next slide, please. In front. Now can you see that Gada is not there? Unfortunately, it broke at some point of time. So we don't really realize that Narasimha is leaning on a mace, and that mace has been carved in such a way by some anonymous 6th century sculptor, chiseling away inside one dark cave temple. It's been cut out in the round, meaning that mace is not attached to the wall. It's only attached to the arm of Narasimha, and Narasimha is leaning on it. So even today, if you go there, the handle is still there. You can put your hand behind it, and there's a gap between the handle and the wall. And that entire Gada was carved out like that. So, great work. Next, please. And then next. Now we go to our very own Mahabalipuram, the correct name being Mamallapuram. We are going to a 7th century Pallava cave temple. This is called the Varaha cave. Next, please. So this is how it looks. Next. This belongs to the time of Narasimhavarman Pallava. This is a similar cave. This is called the Mahishasuramardini cave temple. Next. So in the Varaha cave, you have this very beautiful form of Trivikrama. Now, Trivikrama, as you all know, is Vishnu, who went from being a small boy into a person who with one step covered the entire earth, and with the second step covering the entire heaven. Can I have this? Yes. Thank you. So here, what you'll have to see is there is one leg on the ground. The second leg goes right up over there. Again, we can look at the sculpture and go away, or we can stand and stare. Look at that leg. You see it in 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. The 4 hands have come in front of the leg. So as I always wonder, did the sculptor sculpt the hands first or the leg first? How difficult is this to carve? Amazing. Again, you have this sword there. It's going in front of this hand, behind this hand, and behind that hand. And this sculptor is trying to tell you that that leg of Vishnu that went up like that is going to a different world. In Hindu thought, there are different worlds. And so it's going up to a world where Brahma stands over there. It's going up to the Brahma Loka. And to show you that that world is really somewhere way, way up there, they are depicting here Surya and over here Chandra. It's going up above the sun and the moon and everything else. So that's what they are trying to tell us over here. There are 1,000 other things over here that they are trying to tell us. Just one more. Above that outstretched foot of Vishnu, between Brahma and the head of Vishnu, you have some kind of a creature that has something in its hand. It's very small, it's very inconspicuous, but we really have to pay attention because that's a bear. And that's the best known bear in Indian tradition. That's Jambavan from the Ramayana. So we all know that Jambavan was connected with the Ramayana, with Rama. It went with the monkey army, etc. Now what's he doing in the Trivikrama incarnation of Vishnu, which was much, much, much before the Rama avatara? Now in the Ramayana, Jambavan clearly tells his monkey friends, I was there when Vishnu was Trivikrama, and I went around his head beating on a drum, proclaiming his greatness. So that is what the sculptor here is trying to portray. So when we see a particular carving, let's think of the hard work the sculptor had done, not only physically, but the amount of knowledge he had by way of a tradition. And all that is depicted over here. And when we miss these nuances, I'm afraid we are missing a lot. Next, please. So that's Jambavan there for you, and the drum in his hand is very clearly depicted. Next. We go to the Mahishasuramardini cave temple. Mahishasuramardini sculpture is very well known, and I won't go into that now. Now this is Vishnu reclining. Next, please. This is how he looks. Next. So if you look around Vishnu, there are two men near his feet who are turning away. Now these are two demons called Madhu and Kaitaba. And just by the exhalation of Vishnu, they are unable to stand there and they are blown away. Now, near the coils of the serpent on which Vishnu reclines, there are three people. To the extreme right, you have a lady. And art historians have identified her as the goddess of the earth, Bhudevi or Bhuma Devi. Then in the middle, there's somebody, and to the left of our photographs, there's somebody. So the extreme left one, as you can see, is in movement. He's moving. So that again has been identified as an Ayudha Purusha, one of the weapons of Vishnu. That's Sudarshana. That's the chakra. That's like a discus, which is always in movement. And then the one next to him could be the Nandaka or the sword. Above Vishnu, there are two people. One is round. So that could be the Shankha or the conch, which is roundish in shape. Next to him is a lady, and that is the lady, which I said is the Gada or the Kaumodaki, shown in female form because it is feminine gender in Sanskrit. Next, please. So this is how it is. We could easily miss all this. Next. This is Sudarshana. Next. In all likelihood, this is the sword. That's Nandaka. Next. So we go now to the 8th century. We are leaving Mamallapuram to go to Kanchipuram, 75 kilometers from Chennai, the capital of the Pallavas. This is an outstanding creation in sandstone. This is the famous Kailasanatha temple, earlier known as the Rajasimheshwara, because it was constructed in the reign of Rajasimha Pallava. Next, please. So when we go here, there are a number of sub-shrines around the main temple. Many of you may have been there. All the images, the carvings inside these sub-shrines need to be noticed. So you have something over here. I need to move to the picture. There are two men fighting and their legs are crossed. Now one wears a crown and the other has a very peculiar headdress. This is the fight between Arjuna and Shiva. Many of you may know that in the Mahabharata, it says that before the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna went up to the Himalayas to perform penance to get from Shiva a very important, very powerful weapon called the Pashupata Astra. And Arjuna was performing penance when Shiva decided he would definitely give him that important weapon, but before doing so, he would test the strength of Arjuna before that. So what he does is, I'm afraid the screen is really small and you may not be able to see it. Can you see the form of a pig over here behind the leg of Arjuna? There is a wild boar over here that's clearly depicted. Now, what Shiva did was to send a wild boar, shot an arrow at it at the same time when Arjuna shot an arrow at it, and both of them claimed it as their trophy, and they started fighting. So what the sculptor here was trying to do is, just two men fighting, you could take them for anybody. But that placement of that wild boar there behind the leg of Arjuna clearly tells you that this is Shiva and Arjuna fighting. Now, among the many episodes in the Mahabharata, why would a sculptor sitting here in Kanchipuram pick this particular story and depict it in the form of an important sculpture in this temple? There are so many stories and so many stories in the 1 lakh verse Mahabharata. Why this one? This is where we need an interpretation of the sculpture. There lived around the 6th century in the court of Pallava king called Simha Vishnu, a very great scholar called Bharavi, who wrote a work called the Kirartarjuniyam, based on this very small episode in the Mahabharata of Shiva and Arjuna fighting. And that work was such an important work, not only in the Pallava territory, but even in their enemy Chalukya territory, that caught the imagination of this particular sculptor, and he depicted it there. So noticing that wild boar behind the leg of Arjuna in this sculpture is of paramount importance. Next, please. I don't know whether you can see it now. There's this round thing behind the leg of Arjuna. Yeah, it's there. So you have to stand at an angle to see the head, but that is the clue to unravel the mystery of who these two are. And Shiva came as a kirata or a hunter, so you can see that he's depicted. The hairstyle is like that of a hunter, whereas Arjuna is the prince. Next, please. Keep going. Next. Now we are going on to the Chola period, We all know of the famous temples in Tanjavur, Gangaikonda Cholapuram, and Dharasuram. But much before those temples came to be built, there were many, many small temples across the Chola land, and some of them are absolute gems. There is this village called Pullamangai, which is situated between Kumbakonam and Tanjavur. And it has this granite, small Chola temple called the Brahmapurishwara. Next. Now, this is the size of some of the sculptures in the Brahmapurishwara temple. Instead of putting a scale, I just put my pen so that you would know. Now, many of the Ramayana sculptures have been carved here. This belongs to the 10th century. And this is Rama to the right, are Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita. You can see them very clearly, paying homage to the sages in the forest. To sculpt in such a small space in granite is extremely difficult. Next, please. All these are the same size. This is believed to be, look at the number of figures inside that small space. Look at the number of elephants. There's a horse. How many people you can count? And this is supposed to be Bharata coming to see Rama. So that's what this is. It fits in perfectly because the sculptures are in sequence. Next. This one, just to wake up this audience, can any of you tell me what scene this is from the Ramayana? This is Shurpanaka. This is Lakshmana cutting off the ears and nose of Shurpanaka. Small sculpture, and Sita is very scared. She's terribly scared, so she's turning towards Rama. Next, please. Now this, I'm going away from the Ramayana now. A small sculpture of Shiva doing the Tandava. One leg is right up there, and you can see the ferocity of his movement. To Shiva's right is a small tubby figure. This is a Shiva Gana or a Bhuta Gana. These are the celestial followers of Shiva. I want you to look to Shiva's left, to the right hand side sculpture. There you can see a man sitting down and playing on a musical instrument. Now, actually, he should be turning towards Shiva, but he's turning away because the Tandava is so ferocious. He's turned his back, but his face is turned towards Shiva because he does want to see Shiva. At the same time, he doesn't want to see Shiva. So in a little thing, the size of my usual ballpoint pen, you have all this. This is that much action that's packed into this. Next, please. Look at this. This is again a Shiva Tandava, but this has a particular name. It's called the Gaja Samhara Murti. Many of you may know this. Gaja is elephant, Samhara is to kill, Murti is that particular deity. So you can look over here. The head of the elephant is also seen. Shiva is turning around. Look at the twist in the middle. He's just completely twisted around. The Shiva Gana is kind of yelling because he's seeing Shiva. Around Shiva is the hide of the elephant. This elephant was actually a Rakshasa whom Shiva had killed, stomping on his head, pulled the hide apart. There's blood and gore everywhere, and he's dancing around. To Shiva's left is Parvati. And again, like that drummer, she's scared. She doesn't want to see Shiva. Her body is facing that direction, but her head is this way. You want to see him. You know, when there's an accident on the road, this is what we do. We turn away, but then we are looking that side. This is exactly what we do. That's Parvati is doing that. And in Parvati's hand is her baby, Skanda or Muruha. That child is petrified. So he's jumping out of the arms of Parvati into the arms of a maid that's there, Parvati's attendant. So, yeah. So this much is packed into a very small sculpture. This is somewhere at the base over there. And we'll walk around the Brahmapurishwara temple and say, oh, I wish they had built things as big as the Tanjavur temple. There's beauty in, this is a gem actually. Next, please. Now this, I'm taking you to a similar Gajasamhara Murti, but this is from much later, 12th century. There is this UNESCO World Heritage Site called Dharasuram, and this is from there. Completely of granite, but they've polished it in such a way, you can see the head of the elephant beneath the foot of Shiva, and right on top of his head, can you see the legs? And two of the legs are on the other side. Again, he's twisting his body, his teeth are shown, his eyes are bulging, he's in a very, very angry mood. Similarly, Parvati, half turned. The same pose is here as well. Next. We are going to Gangaikonda Cholapuram. We can't leave it out. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most beautiful pardon me for leaving out Tanjavur, but I do have only 1 hour and we have to leave out some important things. Next, please. Built in the reign of Rajendra Chola. This is supposed to be the masterpiece of the Cholas in stone. This is called Chandesha Anugraha Murti. Now, that man who is seated on the ground is Chandesha, a devotee of Shiva. Anugraha means to bless. So people generally think it's a snake that Shiva is winding around the head of Chandesha. No, it's a flower garland. He is blessing him because this boy, he was a boy, was such a great devotee of Shiva. To cut a long story short, he was even prepared to cut off his father's leg when he came to kick the linga, the object of his worship. And Parvati is seated over there. Now, the sculptor could have put Shiva facing us and put Chandesha on the ground, put his hand on his head and the flower garland. But he chose to turn Shiva around ever so slightly. It's one piece of stone. So that movement in Shiva's body is there. Parvati is also there. But you see, in this picture, Parvati is not the focus. The focus is Chandesha. And therefore, we see Shiva's body and his gaze directly on Chandesha. But Parvati always accompanies Shiva, so she is also there. What we have to, the sculptor is trying to tell us, look where Shiva is looking, that's where you should look. That's Chandesha. That should be the center of your gaze. So, next. Now, this is the entire scene. If we look only at Shiva and Chandesha, again, we are making a mistake. We should look at the sculptures around because the sculptor wanted us to. Next, please. Next. Next, the beauty of that expression. So this is Chandesha cutting off his father's leg with his axe. This is the entire story around the central theme. Next. And this is Chandesha, or the person who actually owned the cows, looking after the cows. To cut a long story short, Chandesha was looking after the cows of the village, and then later things came to cutting off his father's leg. Next, please. Now, again, in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, you have an outstanding Nataraja, unfortunately broken, so you have to have a granite piece propping up his leg. Next. Now, this Nataraja is again one of the best. Here, this sculptor, sitting in the 11th century in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, is trying to tell us here in this hall that he is not sculpting any Nataraja, that he is carving a particular Nataraja in a place called Thiruvalangadu, which is 2 hours from Chennai by road. Now, Thiruvalangadu is a place that's full of banyan trees, and that is the sacred tree of that place. So can you see the banyan tree carved behind the head of Shiva? Shiva as Nataraja generally does not dance under a banyan tree. It is only the god Dakshinamurti who is seated under a banyan tree. So to see a banyan tree on top of Shiva is rare. That's because the sculptor wanted it that way. And then to Shiva's left, can you see a lady dancing? That's Kali, because it is said that an intense dance competition between Shiva and Kali took place at Thiruvalangadu. Next, please. Previous one. And the previous one. I know it's too small for you to see because the screen is very small. There's a figure of a lady over here, a very emaciated form, very thin old lady. And that thin old lady is one of the 63 Nayanmars, or one of the 63 great devotees of Shiva in the Tamil land, called Karaikal Ammayar. And Karaikal Ammayar is closely connected only with the Thiruvalangadu temple. So you have 3 clues. You have the tree, then you have Kali dancing, and you have Karaikal Ammayar. Just clues to show you which particular Nataraja the sculptor meant for us to see. Next, please. And next. We are going to a temple that everybody knows, but nobody knows about this particular view. We are going to another UNESCO World Heritage Site, and this is called Dharasuram, not too far from Kumbakonam. Next, please. This is the famous outer Gopuram, but nobody goes near it these days, unfortunately. Next, please. And next. Now, this is the Gopuram that we are all used to seeing, and we are going in through here. Next. So this is the famous Dharasuram temple, built in the reign of Rajaraja Chola II in the 12th century. Next. So the main part of the temple is built like a chariot. That's very well known, with horses pulling this side. Generally when you read some books or some sites on the internet, it will tell you the horses and elephants are pulling the chariot. Not at all. Only the horses are pulling. The elephants are there in another direction, and if they pull too, that entire thing would come apart. So it's only the horses that are pulling in one direction. Next. Next, the beautiful wheels. Now, this small Nandi Mantapa, this Nandi is not as big as the one in Gangaikanda Cholapuram or the one in Tanjavur. It's very small, but I want you to look at the steps that lead to the Nandi Mantapa. If you look at it from here and then you quickly climb onto it and pray to Nandi and come down, you're not going to see anything. Next, please. So this is how the steps look. They are fully carved with miniature sculptures of musicians and dancers. Next, please. So this is how. Can you imagine how it would have been when it was newly carved and perhaps it was painted also? Next. All these are there. Next, please. All on the steps. Now we are going inside the Mantapa, which is called the Raja Gambhira Mantapa. Raja Gambhira is the king who was very courageous. Next, a title. And the ceiling is like this. Next, please. Completely carved. Can you imagine a sculptor lying down on his back on some scaffolding, looking up like that and carving? If you ask me to paint on the ceiling now, I'll make one big thing about it. But he was carving on granite and spectacular work. Next, please. Next. Next. I don't have to say anything. Who would this be? Krishna? 100% sure? No. Then who would this be? He's got 4 hands and he's holding a flute very clearly. Krishna. When did you see Krishna with 4 hands? Oh, Krishna is known to have 4 hands in many sculptures, but I want you to notice what he holds in the upper 2 hands. If it's Krishna, then surely it should be the Shankha and the Chakra, but it's not. This is Shiva playing on the flute. This is a very, very rare sculpture. And then we've seen Dharasuram, we say, we've spent 3 hours, 4 hours in Dharasuram. What have we seen? This is there, clearly there. 2 ballpoint pen size. So it's very small. Another clue. So see, we need to look, we need to see. Even if we think it's Krishna, and we don't notice what he has in his upper 2 hands, can you see there are 2 tubby things on either side? These are the Shiva Ganas, and Shiva Ganas will not go near Krishna. So this is clearly Shiva, and you have in his upper left hand the deer, and the upper right hand you have the axe, and you have him holding a flute, and you have the 2 Shiva Ganas here. Next, please. Now look at this. So you can look at this sculpture and say, nice polish the Cholas gave and go. Or you can also try to identify who this is. Any guesses from the audience? This is Ganga. Next, please. So this is how Ganga Devi looks. In one hand, she has a flower, and the other hand, she has a water pot. Look at that sublime expression that the Chola artist has given. This is granite. Next, please. So this is how the Rajagambhira Mantapa looks. The alignment of the pillars, all of them richly carved. Next. This is... Yes, please, audience? Any guesses? Not the king, not Hanuman. It's a man. It's a man with a beard. And a man wearing a short tunic, and he's carrying a bow in his hand. Next, please. This is his footwear. What do you think of that? Sandals that the Chola sculptors carved. Now, this is Kannappa Nayanar, one of the 63 Nayanmars who pulled out his eyes to offer to Shiva. Please go back one slide. Now, this is how he looks. Because he was a tribal, he's shown with tribal clothing. And since he walked in the forest, whenever you see a sculpture, whether it's in bronze or in stone, next please, he will be having footwear on. And I think this is a very nice pattern for us to copy. Next, please. So this is goddess Saraswati. Generally, today, we cannot think of Saraswati without a veena. But in those days, 1,000 years back or so, you hardly ever see, you don't see Saraswati with a veena. Instead, in the top right hand, she holds what is called a japamala. And in top left hand, she holds a water pot, a kamandalam. Right hand is in what is called the chin mudra that a teacher has. And the lower left hand holds a manuscript. This is how Saraswati is seen in ancient and medieval sculptures. Next, please. Now, this is who? Shiva and Parvati. So shall we just stop with saying Shiva and Parvati and go away, or shall we look into the sculpture for just a minute? Do you see anything else? Shiva is holding his right hand on top. It's a cupped hand, and there's something there on top. Yes. Now that is Ganga. So, Shiva has the name Gangadhara, he who held the Ganga. And whenever Shiva is shown as Gangadhara, he's always shown with Parvati, and he's always trying to be very nice to Parvati and to placate her, because Parvati doesn't like it when he holds a Ganga in his head. So Gangadhara images are always shown as like this. So that's Ganga about to fall into his matted locks. Next, please. Now these are parts of the Dharasuram temple. Next, please. And completely painted in later times. Please keep going through the next few slides. So all this is there on the ceiling. Stop. Just 1 second. The previous one. This is Indra on his elephant Airavata. Now Indra is one among the Ashta Dikpalas. Ashta, 8, Dik, direction, Pala, guardian. So in Hindu tradition, we have the guardians of the 8 different directions, north, south, east, west, and in between. And this is Indra on the elephant. They're all there on the ceiling of the Dharasuram temple. Next, please. And this is Kubera on the horse. Next. And many others as well. Keep going. So this much work is there. Stop. So we leave the Tamil country. I'm not going all around South India. How much more time do I have? 20 minutes? 20. Yeah, this pink patch is the Hoysala country, where the Hoysala rulers ruled. Southern Mysore and major parts of Tamil Nadu as well, at the height of their empire. Next, please. So we'll go to the Chennakeshava temple in Belur, not too far from Mysore. And this is how the ground plan of this temple looks. It's kind of star-shaped. Next, please. So this is the Belur temple, sorry, without the superstructure. Amazingly well-built temple out of soft stone, which is called chloritic schist. Next. So between the ceiling and the top of the pillar, at an angle of 45 degrees, you have lovely sculptures of ladies, and these are called the Madanikas. Now, how well they have fitted them into slots at the top of the pillar and slots that are there in the ceiling at this height is a remarkable feat by the sculptors and architects of those times. And please look, between the pillars you have pierced stone windows, thick stone, clearly like lattice work. Next, please. So these are the Dwarapalakas leading to the Vishnu shrine. Note the polish on that. This is soft stone, but yet. Next. This as well. Next, please. Now look at this lady. She's part of a pillar. Now, what kind of artist was it that carved this lady? She is in what is called Tribanga, 3 bends in the body, like you see the Odissi dancers dance. She's there. Next. And these are some of the Madanikas on the inside from the top of the pillar at an angle like this, slotted into the ceiling. So when you go into the Belur temple and you look at these ladies, they'll be looking at you. Next. And at the base, at the pedestal, now look at how that big toe is slightly raised from the ground. And look at how that man is looking at her dance. And the other drummer with his drum slung across his chest, that as well. The inscription talks about the name of the sculptor and from where he came. Many of the sculptors' names are thankfully mentioned in the inscriptions of the Hoysalas. Next, please. We go to Halebid. Originally called Dwara Samudra. This was the capital of the Hoysalas, not too far from Belur, 12th century, soft stone. Next, please. A very damaged temple. And then we'll see what the Hoysalas could not achieve by way of grandeur, by height of their temples, because the stone was soft. They more than compensated by the wealth of sculptural detail. Next, please. This is how the sculptures look. We'll go up close very soon. Next. And then next. It's like this, it in and out. Now this array of sculptures over here. Next, please. So this is a Darpana Sundari, a beautiful lady looking at herself in the mirror, a common theme. Next. Now here, what do you see? Govardhana Giridhari. This is Krishna lifting up Mount Govardhana. On all the sides, you have the cows and all that. Again, this is up above eye level. So you look at Krishna, we all know the story. He's lifted Govardhana, and we can go away or we can, next please, choose to stay back. I really don't know how clear this is for you from there, but you have different varieties of trees. Many, many are there. Here is an elephant that's there. And then here is a hunter. I don't know whether you can see him. He has his bow and a quiver full of arrows. And then there's another man, another hunter trying to climb up the tree. And here is something eating something else. So, up above Krishna's head, on that mountain, you have that many creatures, great and small. Little details are all there. If you go and stand before that sculpture, you can notice many more things than I'm showing you in this photograph. Next. Again, it's not showing up very well in this particular screen, but this is Shiva as Gaja Samhara Murti, the same theme that I showed you, but his upper left hand is sculpted so nicely, so accurately, that the nails of his fingers pierce through the hide of the elephant and come out the other side. So that's how it's done over here. No, now that this picture is not clear, you have to go to Halibut to see it. And then war scene. The Mahabharata is clearly shown. Next. This is much clearer. So, this is about maybe 8 inches to 10 inches high. You have this. Please go to the previous slide. You can see two warriors. Okay, the one to the left is, to your left is Karna, the one to your right is Arjuna. Next, please. And now you can see the arrows are all flying from Arjuna to Karna and not the other way around. All right? So next. Next as well. Now, how we identify this as Arjuna is because on top over here, this is his chariot on which he's riding. Go to the previous slide, please. Now, this is the flag post, and on that is a banner. Next. That banner has Hanuman on it. So it's Arjuna. All the different heroes in the Mahabharata had different symbols on their flags. So even when they came from a long distance away, the enemy could identify who exactly it was that was coming. And this was Arjuna. And please notice, Hanuman is turning away from the scene of battle. Because it is said that when Arjuna asked him to be the banner on his flag, Hanuman told him, "Look, I have seen the greatest battle of all. This is between Ravana and Rama. I've seen it." And there is a verse in the Valmiki Ramayanam which says, "Gaganam gaganakaram sagaram sagaropama Rama Ravana yor yuddham Rama Ravana yor iva." That fight between Rama and Ravana can be compared only to the sky and to the sea, to the ocean. So Hanuman didn't want to see this pygmy fight, so he turned away from the scene of battle. Next please. We go to Somanathpur, which is again a 13th century Hoysala period temple, next, on the banks of the river Kaveri. Very unusual temple because you come in from the right hand side and straight there is a shrine for Vishnu, to the left there is a sanctum for Vishnu, and to the right there is a sanctum for Vishnu. So if you stand in one particular spot, you just have to move your head and not move your body, and you can see the three forms. The main one is Keshava, to the right is Janardhana, to the left is Venugopala. Next please. So now we are entering the Venugopala sanctum, and look at, like a torana, how nicely they have crafted this in soft stone. Next. I'm sorry, it's a little mixed. And this is how you enter the Somnath temple. Next. This is how the Somnath temple actually looks, the Keshava temple. Next. Now we are looking at the image of Krishna over here. Venugopala, all very clear. Again, we can choose to go away very happy looking at Krishna, or we can choose to see. The pedestal on which Krishna is standing is also star-shaped like the outline of the temple itself. And at the base over here, you have Garuda. And then next please, that halo around Krishna, I'm sorry it's not clear, has gopikas, all his gopis looking at him. Next, it also has the cows looking adoringly at Krishna as he plays the flute. Next please, look at how the cows. This is a halo, a prabha, the like of which we've not seen anywhere else. Next please. These many cows are carved on it because after all he was a divine flutist. Next, on the outside of the temple, keep going, next. You have sculptures of warriors. And this one holds a sword and a shield. Next one. This one also. That many different varieties of weapons, different varieties of shields also over here. You can learn so much about warfare from this temple. Next, please. There you are. Drummers, musicians, warriors, you have it all. Next. We go to Hampi, which in 1336 became the capital of the Vijayanagara Empire till 1565 when it was destroyed. This is the Tungabhadra river on the banks of which it is. Next, please. So we go to a particular temple, a 15th century temple called the Hazara Rama, a new name. It was the Ramchandra temple. Hazara as in 1000. But why? Next. Because the walls of the temple, next please. The walls of the temple are completely covered with the entire Ramayana sculptures. And this is where it all begins with, yes, anybody in the audience? This is Shravan Kumar carrying his blind parents, and he has hung them up on a tree there, the tree to your right, extreme right. Next. And then he goes to get water for them, and this is Dasharatha. So the sculptor wanted you to identify Dasharatha. How would you know it's Dasharatha? He holds an umbrella above his head for royalty. So Dasharatha shoots an arrow, hearing the gurgling sound in the water, thinking it's an animal, but unfortunately, next, the arrow pierces the heart of Shravan Kumar and he dies. This is there, sculpture after sculpture after sculpture. Next, here. Now this is Dasharatha performing what is called the Putra Kameshti Yaga because he didn't have children and he wanted children. But who is there to the right? We have to identify him. He has the face of a deer. Now, this is Dasharatha's son-in-law called Rishyashringa. Dasharatha had a daughter. We didn't know that. Her name was Shanta, and she was married to Rishyashringa. And Rishyashringa performed this particular ritual for him. So that is how it's shown over here. Next, please. Then the three wives of Dasharatha. In the sequence, it goes like this. Now, Rishyashringa is clearly seen with the face of a deer. Next, please. And this is Rama in the court of Janaka, and Janaka is seated in front of him. He has to string the bow. Now look at the imagination of this particular artist. No, you and I would not have thought of Rama putting his leg on the bow and trying to string it like that. But here the artist thought of it because he had to actually bend it, and it was a very, very difficult to do. And then that's Lakshmana standing behind him. That rapt attention. Next. This scene, anybody from the audience? I've jumped many scenes. I've jumped many scenes. This is Vali. Rama has put the arrow into the heart of Vali, and he's resting his head on his wife Tara's lap, and that's their son, little son Angada looking on. No detail has been left out. Next, please. And that's Ramana gone with 10 heads. Next. And this is Rama worshipping in Rameshwaram, the linga. Next. And finally, they're all together in Ayodhya. Next, please. So I'm concluding with another few slides only. This is the Varadaraja Perumal temple in Kanchipuram. Now, this is a temple. All the temples that I've shown you, all the sculptures I've shown you till now, I have dated. Now, this is one temple that has grown over time. So next, I'm taking you to one particular part of the temple that's called the Kalyana Mantapa. This is where the marriage of the god and goddess takes place year after year. Next, please. And this is a stone chain that's made of one piece of stone. Many times when we've been there, we've been told, yes, the whole thing is one piece of stone, it got broken, and this is one metal piece, this is one piece. But we've not been told that this end is like a flower, a lotus flower, and there are 4 parrots pecking at the flower right at the end. The whole thing is one piece, but not just that. This is not connected here. This whole thing is one piece of stone. That corner also. So how can you attach that stone link to? You didn't have adhesives like Fevicol or something at that point of time. So it was not stuck there. The edge, the triangle, plus that chain is one piece of stone. So then, can you try and imagine how big a piece of rock they must have brought, and there is no mountain in the vicinity of Kanchipuram. You have to go at least 20 kilometers to bring it. They hauled that thing there and they cut it like this and they fitted it on top, and then this. Look at that work. Next. And inside the Kalyana Mandapam, it's like this. Each is a monolith. Each is one piece of stone. And these are the kind of pillars that you have. Next. So it's a Vishnu temple. So sculptures of Vishnu standing. Next. Sitting, very different from the one you saw in Badami, mind you. And stop here. Now, we can easily bypass this and say, I don't know, I don't care, but let us care. Now, this particular sculpture of Vishnu is as though coming out of the flames of the fire. Now, why would he be doing that? When have we seen Vishnu inside fire? Now, this is very important because you have to understand not only the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and all that to be able to identify sculptures, you have to understand the tradition of a temple itself. Now, according to the Sthala Puranam or this temple's tradition, Brahma performed a ritual, a yaga, and out of the fire came Vishnu. So this is that story that's depicted over here. Unless you knew that, how would you identify the sculpture? But there's another way of going. You can look at it and say, I don't understand, and try to get to the root. But we never do that, do we? So when you go into the main sanctum of this temple, you will see Varadaraja Perumal, that's Vishnu, exactly like this. But you won't see him as such because his clothes go over the flames of the fire. So you don't really see him like this. But this is how he is. Next, please. Then you come across this man. He's a man, but he's not a god. He doesn't have 4 hands. Man, you can see that bend at the waist to show that he's a devotee. And he has something long in his hand and then something round above it. Again, it's to do with this temple. If you want to understand the history of a temple, you can understand it through its sculptures. This was a person called Tirukkachi Nambi, who day and night performed what is called the Alavata Kainkari, or fanning the god with the leaves, the stitched leaves of the banyan tree attached to a handle. Next, please. We go to Srirangam, the largest temple, the largest living temple in the whole world. Next. It's about 156 approximately acres, and it's got 7 concentric enclosures. No temple ever like this. Next, please. Now we go. This temple again has grown architecturally possibly over the last 2,000 years. We go to a particular mantapa which has got 100 pillars. It's called the Sesharaya Mantapa. Next, please. And this is how each pillar on the outside looks. Each pillar is about 22 feet in height and carved richly like this. Next. So, next. Now, if you look at this particular sculpture, and again, I don't know how well you can view it from there. If you look at this man and this short man next to him, they are wearing very European type clothes. Now, this is a 17th century sculpture. So, they were looking at whatever they saw around them and putting it in the form of sculpture. That's all. Next, please. Now, this, again, we can choose to ignore or we can choose to delve deep into. This is Vibhishana carrying a mantapa in his hand. And this, again, is to do with the tradition of this temple. The tradition of this temple says that Rama gave Vibhishana a mantapa inside which was Lord Ranganatha Vishnu. And then that came to become this temple that it is today. Next, please. Now, this is the main part of the Sri Ranganatha Swami temple, the top. Next. But generally, people don't look at the bottom. It's like this. The main shrine is actually round in shape. We usually don't notice that. Next. And as we go into that space, generally its permission is not given. On the ceiling, you have 17th century paintings. This belongs to a period called the Nayak era. And between 2 rows of paintings, you have a strip black where the scenes above are described. Next, please. So this again is Vibhishana carrying that mantapa inside which is Ranganatha. So, you will not understand this unless you understand the ethos, the tradition of the temple. Next, please. Keep going. Keep going. So this is how the paintings actually look around the main sanctum. Next, please. Very quickly, just in 5 minutes I'll be done. This we are going to Lepakshi. I will still take you to Andhra. Quick. Just keep going. This is a temple which has the largest Nandi in the world, and this Nandi is what we call in situ. There was a big piece of rock and they carved it into a Nandi. Look at the jewels and the bells. Keep going. And all the things that he wears. This is a grand Nandi, beautifully bedecked. Another 3 slides. Keep going. Yeah, even that rope is depicted so well. Next one. And you can see the hoof So realistically done. Now, again, the tradition of this temple is it's a 16th century temple when Achyutaraya, the Vijayanagara king, was ruling over entire South India almost. And his governor, Virupanna, in this area, is supposed to have been in charge of the treasury there, and he spent a lot of money on this temple. And someone told Achyutaraya that he is spending all the state money. So when the king came to question him, Virupanna is said to have pulled his eyes out and dashed them against the walls of the temple. And so this structure remains incomplete till this day, though it's a worshipping temple. Just go. These are all the fabulous sculptures that you see. Ganesha on one side, next. And on this wall, you see the entire Sthala Puranam of the Kalahastishwara temple. You know, there's a place called Kalahasti, and the lingam there was worshipped by this Kannappa Nayanar, a person who was even prepared to remove his eyes for the sake of Shiva. Next, please. And then there's an elephant that worshipped in this temple. Next. And then there was a spider also that worshipped in this temple. All the niggling details are also given. And you have this beautiful Nagalingam that's out of one piece of stone, except for the lingam. Next, keep going. Now this, stop. Here is the mantapa that remained incomplete when Virupanna died. So this is incomplete. You don't see the ceiling above it. Next, when you go inside, this is how it looks. Fabulous. Next please. It's whitish granite. Stop here. Stop. So this was meant for the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. This was supposed to be the Kalyana Mantapa. And here you can see Shiva and Parvati getting married. Next. Can you see Shiva clasping the hands of Parvati here? This is where we need to pay attention to detail. Okay, that's the marriage ceremony. Next. Now, who came to witness this marriage? All the deities came, and they are carved each on a pillar. This previous, this is Vishnu. This is multi-armed, multi-headed Vishnu in his Vishwarupa. He was there. Next one. We'll not know who this is unless you see that small thing over here. These are the Ashtadikpalas, the guardians of the 8 different directions. And this is a bull over here. This is Shiva, next, in his form as Ishana. So the bull is there. Next, please. Can you see it? Okay, next. Now, next one is Indra, because the elephant Airavata is here. Next. There you go. Okay, next. You will not know who this is till you see this. This is a makara, or an aquatic creature. So that's Varuna. Next. You see, this is Varuna. Next one. Keep going. Varuna. Go, please. Next one. This is a deer. So that man above, the god above, was Vayu, wind god. And then you have a horse here. So that's Kubera. Next. Then you have buffalo. So that's Yama. So you have all these gods, and Ganesha is also there. So on each pillar is a deity, and they have given you clues as to how to identify him or her, and they all came to witness the marriage of Shiva. I'm stopping with Ganesha. I should have started with Ganesha, but then I just want to tell you that, you know, when you walk into a museum and you walk into a temple, there are these very many sculptures, and even looking at them, they look very beautiful, and so we are very content. But then, when you get into the details and when you start to notice the nuances, that particular sculpture will actually come to life and will start talking to you. Try it. Thank you.
This Dasarada's son-in-law is shown as a deer. Any reason for that? Yes. Second one, you said there's a 8-handed Vishnu in Kanjipuram. Which temple is it? I missed it.
The second question, it's the Ashtabhuja Perumal temple. That is the temple of Vishnu with 8 hands. It's in the center of Kanchipuram. Rishishringa has the face of a deer. It's a very, very long and complicated story, so I won't go into it. But yes, he is always shown with the face of a deer.
Thank you very much for a brilliant presentation. It was really enjoyable. Quick question is, do you have a book that you've written along with commentary on everything that you said? Because every word that you caught on, I want to visit each and every place and enjoy it myself.
Thank you so much. I'll write it soon. Will do, sir. You know, Indology writers do not earn money.
No. Please, just for try. You afford, you
Thank you. No, I'll write for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
You showed one with that banyan tree, the Natarajar with the banyan tree. We also saw that there was there was a dance competition between Kali and all. There was a structure lying down. It looked like a baby. What was that?
Okay, that was underneath the foot of Shiva.
Yeah.
Now, whenever you see an image of Nataraja, you will definitely see that baby thing. But believe me, it's no baby. In technical terms, it's called Apasmara Purusha. Now, Purusha is a man. Apasmara is ignorance. So that's our ignorance that Shiva is stepping on. And he's completely wiping out our ignorance. Once our ignorance is wiped out, ignorance equals ego. Our ego is wiped out. What happens when our ego is wiped out? We get a supreme bliss. The supreme consciousness enters us. So that's the thing. That's the symbolism.
So we saw Ganga Dhara, where we said that he's welcoming Ganga onto his matted locks.
Yeah.
But seeing that Shiva is cajoling Parvati, could it be the other way, where there is a scene where Parvati says that she gets angry on Shiva for having Ganga on his head while she's just a half of his other body. So could it be the other way around, where he's letting go of Ganga for a while?
No. I think you're even more imaginative than this sculptor. But no, it's not known that Shiva ever let go of Ganga, because it was his promise to Bhagirath that he would hold the Ganga, and he had to do that. But very nice, Aryamba. Very nice. I keep doing tours. I don't. I'm not important enough to have a website, but yes, you can contact me. I'll step down.
Please give us some email or whatever.
Sure, I will.
We can
I will.
contact you.
Just hang on a minute. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Like, ma'am, we saw the cave number 3 in Badami, where the Vishnu had a crown, which you said was like influence from the Pallava kings who would.
Chalukya kings.
Oh, okay.
Badami is Chalukyan territory, was Chalukyan territory, and it could have been influenced from there, possibly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I Kudimallam. I left out
You
like.
should have.
Thank you.
You all
But then
missed
somebody say
something.
Tirupati and somebody say somebody else. So there's
Gudimalla,
no
Gudimalla.
separate lecture, ma'am, for you. Then no, Gudimalla. Thank you so much.
Any more questions? Okay, with that, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for patiently answering all the questions, and it was a lovely session.